Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Blue Wave. I'm your host, Max Lopez. We got a really good one here for you today. So we'll be starting off with the real reason the GOP attacks transgender people. There's a new clip from a Trump speech circulating, and he kind of just says the quiet part out loud. And taking into account also some of the past things Trump has done and said about transgender people, it really sheds light on the true reason that the GOP goes after these people. And we'll also be looking at some of their awful policy that they're trying to distract from. Next up, we got DeSantis suffering a huge blow in his battle with Disney. It's just really not going well for him, and he's wasting a lot of political capital on his feud with Disney. We'll get into that. We have what happened to Republicans' love for the free market. DeSantis signing a anti-direct-to-consumer sales bill in Florida, except this one automaker is exempt. And it really makes you question, I thought the Republicans were all for love of the free market, unbridled and unfiltered and unrestricted free market, baby. This seems like restricting the free market. I don't know. Next, we got the real two-tiered justice system that exists in terms of Donald Trump and how he's been treated. In terms of how the law has gone after him, and especially in relation to this documents case. There is a two-tiered justice system. It just doesn't exist in the way that Republicans would have you believe that it exists. And lastly, we're going to finish off with a white supremacist taking MDMA and realizing how dumb racism is. Really, really interesting study that was done, this scientific test, if you will, where they had a controlled subject who went to the Charlottesville 2017 Unite the Right rally, and he takes MDMA, and some really interesting things that he says about his white supremacist beliefs after taking this drug. So we'll jump into the first article here. And first, we're going to start out with looking at this clip of Donald Trump speaking recently. And he says the quiet part out loud about why the GOP is so adamant about going after transgender people and why they all seem to be lock and step in agreement with how they want to go after the LGBTQ community. So let's watch this clip here.
Critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. It's amazing how strongly people feel about that. You see, I'm talking about cutting taxes. People go like that. Talk about transgender. Everyone goes crazy. Who would have thought 5 years ago you didn't know what the hell it was? But one that's incredible.
Wow, that awkward laughter from the crowd. Wow. So you got Trump here saying 10 years ago, no one even knew what transgender people were, and it wasn't an issue. And you guys, I talk about cutting taxes and it's light applause. And when I talk about transgender issues, I get a standing ovation and it's way louder. So the GOP has, for years and years and years, been really ever since the 2015 the 2015 Supreme Court decision that codified gay marriage rights into all 50 states in the United States. And ever since then, the Republicans have made it more and more and more their agenda to call out this way of life that they disagree with and do everything they can to legislatively make it harder for LGBT people to live the life that they want to live. Okay. And as the politicians all have their messaging in lockstep, and they've all been saying the same things about LGBT, the Republican Party has largely gone right along with it. And even in instances when they have family members that are LGBT, or people that are close to them in other ways that are LGBT, well, guess what? The Republican voter base is more likely to go along with what the Republican politicians have been saying about the issue for a long time now. So before a long time, it was gay rights and just homosexual marriage and lesbian marriage that the Republicans had such a problem with. Ever since the 2015 Supreme Court decision, it's gotten harder for them to do that. So now trans is the new the new group to attack, because the laws are not as clear as day protecting transgender rights as they are gay marriage. So go ahead, and to illustrate my point, I'm going to bring up this Insider article that says Trump, this is from yesterday. It says Trump welcomed transgender women in his Miss Universe pageant years before he started campaigning on excluding them from women's sports. Trump took credit in 2012 for ending the Miss Universe pageant's ban on transgender women. He welcomed the participation of Jenna Taklova, a 23-year-old transgender woman. And now Trump is campaigning to ban trans women from competing in women's sports. Former President Donald Trump has become an outspoken critic of transgender women competing in women's sports, frequently discussing the topic at his rallies, but in the past welcomed them in a beauty pageant he ran. CNN's Andrew Kaczynski, I'm not going to try to say that last name. CNN's Andrew resurfaced Trump's stance on trans women competing in the Miss Universe pageant, which he owned from 1996 to 2015. Trump gave several TV and radio interviews in 2012 in which he celebrated the participation of Jenna Talakova, a 23-year-old transgender woman, for partaking in a pageant in Canada. Several news outlets from April 2012 credit Trump specifically with reversing the pageant's ban on transgender women. Trump told CNN at the time he and Miss Universe organization had decided to reverse the ban even before they heard Talakova had enlisted women's rights lawyer Gloria Allred to help her challenge it. Michael Cohen, then Trump's personal lawyer, told E! News that Trump and the organization made the fair and just decision to allow Talakova to compete in the Miss Universe 2012 Canada pageant. So, as you can see, before the Republicans were whipped up into a frenzy about this issue, and there was political points to be scored by being against transgender people, Trump was actually pretty open to the issue. And you know, he went as far as allowing a transgender person to compete in his own pageant. So if he morally deep down felt so morally aghast at transgender people, you know, why would he ever allow one to be anywhere near his pageant? He would have the final say. You know, Trump has the final say of who and who isn't allowed in these sort of these beauty pageants that he used to run. And you would just think that he would be a lot more outspoken against allowing a transgender person to compete in his pageant if it was what he actually morally believed. Now, I don't think the Republicans actually morally care one way or the other. They just want to score political points. And not only do they want to score political points, but they also want to distract from their policy, which in many cases, in all cases, is to cut taxes for rich people and cut funding to welfare programs and funnel money upward from the lowest part and the poorest people in our society, to funnel money upwards from them and the middle class to the 1%. That is the Republicans' one policy that they consistently have had. And if people aren't riled up, worried about transgender issues, and all this stuff that doesn't really affect society in any sort of meaningful, tangible way, what they'll pay attention to is stuff like this. The article from Common Dreams here. New GOP bills would hand richest 1% over $28 billion in tax cuts next year. The poorest fifth, meanwhile, would get just $1.4 billion in tax cuts under the Republican legislation. Wow. I mean, this is their only legislation. This is their only policy. Tax cut legislation that House Republicans are set to consider this week after pushing the global economy to the brink of disaster would deliver more than $28 billion to the richest 1% of Americans next year, and just $1.4 billion to the poorest fifth of the economy. That's according to new analysis of the legislation by the Institute on Taxation and Economy Policy, ITIP, which estimated Sunday that the poorest fifth of Americans would receive an average tax break of just $40 next year under three new Republican bills, one of which is titled the Tax Cuts for Working Families Act. By contrast, ITEP showed people on the top 1% of income distribution would see an average tax cut of $16,500 under the legislation. The wealthiest 20% of Americans would receive a total of $60.8 billion in tax cuts next year under the new bills, which are unlikely to pass the divided Congress. Down here of who gets what. Poorest 20%, $40 less. 20 poorest percent, $190 less, and then it goes up $340, $420, $840, $1,850, $16,000. Because everybody knows that the people who really need a break in this country are the richest people in the country, because that's who we need to help out, but no welfare for the poor. It's just crazy. I'll go ahead and leave this whole article in the description, but as you can see here, this is no, as they try to frame it, this is no tax cuts for middle class working families. Okay, if I'll put it this way, if you have somebody that's telling you they're hungry, and in order to satisfy their hunger, they are going to need 2 slices of pizza. Okay, and you tell that person, you know what, I'm willing to give you a half of a slice of pizza, but I'm gonna take the rest of the pizza for myself. So here's your half a slice of pizza. Aren't you glad you're not getting no pizza at all? At least you got a half of a slice. But I need 2 slices to live. We'll take your half a slice and be happy with it. What cruelty is that? What inhumanity is that? I mean, it's just crazy. Okay, if people knew what the Republicans wanted for this country, they would not vote in such high numbers for them. But this is why they distract with the transgender stuff. It's all this big distraction. Okay, and then here's another policy point that they would like to distract from is Republicans plan to cut free school lunches. Newsweek. Yeah, you heard me right. Cut free lunches. The largest ideological caucus in the House Republican Conference is proposing steep cuts to free and reduced school lunch programs nationwide, citing the need to prevent widespread fraud present in the program. How about we audit the Pentagon? How about we go after some of the fraud that happens there and the misuse of funds that happens there? Embedded deep in the Republican Study Committee's recommended budget released Wednesday night, the plan calls for a series of reforms designed to cut federal funding for school lunches and encourage states to increase their shares of funding for the program. A move the RSC argues will encourage state legislators to restrict the eligible population receiving school lunch to truly needy households. The decision comes on the heels of the sunset of a widespread expansion of free school lunch programs during the COVID-19 pandemic, a policy decision the federal government said actively proved to reduce childhood hunger. So it goes on. It says, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, food insecurity nationwide fell 7 percentage points from the start of the pandemic to 14.2% by the end of summer 2021, a sign that the U.S. Census Bureau claimed that was a direct result of the expanded school lunch programs. A majority of those with children receiving assistance were already receiving food stamps, while about half of the families using programs reported either having difficulty meeting monthly expenses or needing to borrow from friends and family to make ends meet. Many others who traditionally relied on the program, however, did not report similar circumstances, fueling arguments from conservatives that the program was ripe for additional oversight and regulation. Okay, so their argument is there might be a few people who they could theoretically afford to pay for school lunch. So we're going to restrict funding and lower the funding and allow states to allocate funding how they please for school lunches, just because we think that a few people might be getting school lunches that they shouldn't be. It's like, that's just crazy when you have statistics that say from the USDA that say that the pandemic era expansion of food assistance for children reduced food insecurity. So what that tells me is that the federal government providing more money and providing more assistance to families who need help buying lunch for their kids, that reduces childhood hunger, and that reduces the stress that families have to worry about when sending their kid to school. It's one less thing to worry about. At least they're going to get fed, and they're going to come home and they're going to be fed, and that's that. The argument that a few people might be getting school lunches that they shouldn't be, so we should restrict it and potentially increase food insecurity and go back to pre-pandemic levels of childhood food insecurity, that is just outrageous and abhorrent policy. Okay? When you have how many people in the US that would agree that school lunches should be free? Okay, an overwhelming majority of people would agree with that. Okay? And also what you're leaving up, if they were to have their way, they'll go, oh, well, we're not directly restricting school lunch programs. We're not directly reducing the funds. But what they're hoping to do here is to change the laws so that states could enact their own laws that could potentially reduce the number of people receiving free lunches. And that's going to make food security go up. So it's abhorrent policy. And again, the reason that the Republicans are so adamantly against transgender issues and LGBT issues and their way of life is because it gives people a red herring to pay attention to that's going to keep their attention and their eyeballs off of, again, the Republicans' abhorrent policy that exists. All right? So Ron DeSantis suffering a huge blow in his battle with Disney. Another Newsweek article here. In case you guys aren't all caught up, DeSantis has been going after Disney based on their acceptance of LGBT people, and basically they're speaking out against his "Don't Say Gay" bill. So let's get into the article here. It says DeSantis has seen his favorability drop across the country as his nemesis Disney gets more popular. I'm just gonna stop there for a second. Only a figure like as despicable and disgusting as Ron DeSantis could unite a bunch of liberals and people generally in the country to unite in favor of a monolithic corporation like Disney. You know what I mean? I did not have that on my bingo card of 2023 that I would be cheering on Disney, but here we are. DeSantis has been engaged in a feud with the corporate powerhouse ever since Disney spoke out against his Don't Say Gay bill in 2022. The governor signed the bill, which bans the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in certain grades at Florida schools into law. DeSantis' popularity rating has fallen since November, and almost half of Americans see him in an unfavorable light, according to a survey by polling organization Navigator. Over the same period, Disney's favorability rating has remained high, with people siding with the corporation in its beef with DeSantis, and nearly 2 in 3 Americans having a favorable view of the media giant. Wow. 2 in 3 Americans? The majority of people across all ethnic groups sided with Disney and believe it is in the right in the Florida governor's crusade against it. Even worse news for DeSantis is that his favorability rating among Republicans has declined 19 points since November. 1 in 5 Republicans sided with Disney, believing the company is in the right. In an act perceived as retaliation for Disney's opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill, DeSantis set his sights on the land where Disney World is situated in Orlando, Florida. He attempted to strip Disney of social privileges and tax breaks protected under the Randy Creek Improvement District, which has allowed the company to essentially run as its own self-governing authority in Florida for more than 50 years. But Disney managed to legally outmaneuver the governor, who has announced his intention to run for the Republican candidacy. Yes, we know that. DeSantis established the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District to replace the Randy Creek Board, but its hand-picked 5-person membership revealed their predecessors had signed a deal with Disney in February that severely restricts the new board's powers and essentially allows Disney to remain self-governing. They put a little secret clause in there so that even when this new board that DeSantis has appointed, so that Disney can't self-govern, this says here that it's allowing Disney to allow self-governing. In May, Disney said it would pull a proposed plan to build a $1 billion corporate campus in Central Florida because of considerable changes that have occurred since the announcement of this project. If the project had gone ahead, it would have created 2,000 jobs in the state. Disney has also filed a lawsuit against DeSantis in which it accused him of attempting to punish the company over its opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill, which it argued violated its First Amendment rights. He reacted by filing a motion to have the judge in the case, Chief Judge Mark Walker, replaced over a perceived lack of impartiality. DeSantis has said there was zero chance that he would back down in his battle with Disney. They're not going to govern themselves. We the people are going to govern, DeSantis said in a New Hampshire visit. To put one corporation on a pedestal and let them be exempt from the laws is not good policy. It's not the free market economics, and it's not something that our state is going to be involved in. We will not change from that. They can do whatever they want. I know people trying to chirp in and say this or that. The chance of us backing down from that is zero. So DeSantis is wasting a lot of political capital on this attack on Disney, okay? As you can see here in the article, a majority of people across the board, and even some Republicans, 1 in 5 Republicans, side with Disney over DeSantis in this, okay? And you have to wonder, why spend your political capital on an issue that most people don't even agree with you on, when you could be spending your time and energy attacking the candidate that is above you and trying to chip away at the lead that they hold over you in any meaningful, tangible, sustained, strategic way. This is the kind of stuff that tells me DeSantis doesn't have a path forward to the nomination, okay? Half the amount of energy that he's spending on Disney, on attacking Trump, maybe I would go from a 0 to a non-zero number of chance DeSantis gets the Republican nomination. But with him continuing this crusade. And even when Disney has been scoring legal wins, it just makes you wonder what is the Ron DeSantis campaign's, what is their strategy? What are his strategists telling him on a daily basis that it's going to help his campaign? You know, I just really, really am at a loss to figure out how this benefits him, because you're not gaining any voters. Sure, the people that are totally against LGBTQ and are totally wrapped up in DeSantis's culture war nonsense, they're going along with it, and they're this riles them up. But the people in Florida who are embroiled in DeSantis's culture war nonsense do not make a president. Okay, if you're getting those people to vote for you, does not make you a president of the United States. You gotta win the electoral college, bro. You gotta win. You gotta win a majority of states and win the electoral college to become president. Not rile up your base in Florida that's already going along with whatever the hell you're saying. So, yeah, a lot of wasted political capital, and Ron DeSantis's lambasting of, oh well, this is against the free market, or this is not free market economics, and it's not something that our state is going to be involved in, he said. This next video, we're going to look at why Ron DeSantis, in fact, doesn't seem to be as for the free market as it seems. So Ron DeSantis signed a bill that banned direct-to-consumer car sales in Florida, but left an exception for Tesla. What happened to the love of unregulated, unfiltered, unchecked free market enterprise? Isn't that what the Republicans are all freaking about? Free market, free market, free market at all costs, and at any means necessary. Free market, baby. Well, this doesn't seem like that goes along with that line of thinking. So I got Ron DeSantis of Florida signed a bill banning direct-to-consumer car sales in the state. But the bill leaves a notable exception for electric car companies, including Tesla. Tesla CEO Elon Musk is cozy with DeSantis and hosted his presidential campaign launch on Twitter. As the measure prohibits car manufacturers from selling directly to consumers in the state and instead requires them to rely on franchise dealerships. But there's a carve-out in the legislation that allows electric car companies like Tesla to continue selling directly to their customers without using a dealership if that's already their established mode. Startups like Rivian and Lucid, which have followed Tesla's lead on direct-to-consumer sales, would also be exempt. Musk, who owns Twitter, hosted DeSantis' presidential campaign launch on Twitter Spaces last month. DeSantis' administration also struck a deal with Musk's SpaceX last year to set up Starlink satellite services in parts of Southwest Florida that have been affected by Hurricane Ian. Musk has publicly expressed support for DeSantis' 2024 presidential bid. He tweeted that President Donald Trump, the current GOP frontrunner, was too old for a 2024 run, and that DeSantis would easily win against Joe Biden. Okay, whatever. So dealerships are key to the EV transition. Traditional automakers have no plans to get rid of the dealership model that they've used for decades, even if it's taken some convincing to get everybody on board. Ford, for example, has convinced most dealers to sell electric cars while getting rid of everyone's least favorite part of a dealership, haggling. In fact, franchise dealer lots and their service departments are key to making sure consumers can test drive new electric vehicles and, perhaps more importantly, get them serviced. Last year, GM reported seeing a significant number of Tesla customers in its shops as the company struggles to make sure its service department can keep up with this explosive growth. Okay, so that's the end of the article. Banning direct-to-consumer car sales in Florida? What? Why? Who is wanting this? Who out there? I mean, I can't even imagine the MAGA people are wanting this. Like, this is just like so far down the list of issues that Americans care about that it makes you wonder, is DeSantis sitting there thinking that this is going to be, that people are going to see him enacting this new law and that this is going to help make a dent in Donald Trump's lead against him? Come on. Like, do we really want this guy as president of the United States? Do we really want direct-to-consumer car sales potentially being banned in the entire U.S. if DeSantis was president? And legislation was landed on his desk that was designed to do just that. Car dealerships suck. Okay, everybody hates them. Everybody hates car dealers. But we're gonna make America great again, and we're gonna do away with the woke direct to consumer companies, and we're gonna force people to go into car dealerships. That's what this guy is worried about. That's what, out of all the things to be worried about, all of the issues facing our country, I don't even know what other commentary to make. I don't. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous that this guy thinks that he has any sort of snowball's chance in hell to become president. It's quite silly. So we got Jon Stewart here, who accurately points out that the two-tier justice system that exists in our country has actually benefited Trump and helped him throughout the years. And the two-tier justice system that the Republicans are complaining about, how, it's led by Democrats, and this is all just a Democrat ploy to politically hurt Trump and to help Biden win re-election, because we're so scared of Trump that we have to come up with, crackpot conspiracies to try to bring him down. It's all a bunch of nonsense, okay? In fact, the two-tier justice system that exists, Trump's benefited directly from it, as Jon Stewart eloquently points out here in the clip.
To protect himself from legal accountability at every turn. He has lived his entire adult life in the space twixt illegal and unethical. He's in the tier where you get the platinum arraignment package. No cuffs, no mugshot, all you can eat fingerprint ink. You think regular people get to surround themselves with a meat shield of henchmen to go to prison in their place? But if you really want to know what tier Donald Trump is in, let's look at an actual fraud we know he was guilty of. He used his own charitable foundation like a piggy bank, or as it's sometimes known, embezzlement.
Shocking pattern of illegality, including unlawful coordination with the Trump presidential campaign, repeated and willful self-dealing, and much more.
He stole from his own charitable foundation. How much more what did he also nut punch a priest? How are non-Trumps punished for something like that? Well, some get 2 years in jail. Some get 5 years in jail. Some get 10 years in jail for stealing from charitable donations. But what happened to this selfless shield of the working man? Well, he agreed to shut down his charity piggy bank and paid a $2 million settlement, or on your Trump conversion chart, 15 to 16 porn star hushings. He wasn't even charged with a crime. So when people say this,
Selective prosecution, and it's wrong.
Selective prosecution on steroids.
It does feel like a selective prosecution. If his name were John Smith, Melvin Bragg would not be bringing this case.
If his name was John Smith, he'd be in jail already. Yes. It's all selective prosecution. And when you're in the good tier, you can do whatever you want, and you're probably going to be fine. In fact, you might even be president twice.
Wow. So, as John eloquently points out here, we do have a two-tier justice system in this country. There's justice that exists for the rich and powerful and the insulated, and there's justice for everybody else. And, oh, hey, kitty. And if you or I or some random person in the United States were to commit the crimes that, you know, allegedly Trump has committed, we would not be treated the same, not even close. And so it's kind of ridiculous for the Republicans to complain about this two-tier justice system when, as Jon Stewart pointed out here, in relation to his charity that he was using like a piggy bank and siphoning funds from, anybody else does that in Washington or just generally, okay, they would be lambasted by the media. They would be lambasted by the public. There would be, you know, this moral, there would be a lot of people who were just really upset about that a charity is being used in such a way. I mean, can we imagine if it was Obama that did that? Imagine if it was any other Democrat that did that, okay? They'd be all up in arms about it, like crazy. And rightfully so. Because it's not right, but somehow Trump gets a pass on all this because that's just Trump or whatever. There is a two-tier justice system that exists in the United States. The fact is, Trump is the benefactor of it more so than it's hurt him. And to pretend like this new documents case, an indictment, is some sort of Democrat witch hunt, and that we're just trying to bring Trump down. All he had to do was return the documents. That's all he had to do, and there would be no indictment. But Trump's too egotistical to be told what to do because those are my documents. I was president. I have a right to have these. And all he had to do was just return the documents. Was it a Democrat conspiracy to get Trump to not return the documents? Was it a Democrat telling him to keep hold of the documents and to store them in the way that he did? I don't think so. I think that was Trump's advisors and Trump's decision making that got him in this problem in the first place. So, yeah, Jon Stewart, always on point, and I always like what he has to say. And yeah, the two-tier justice system that exists benefits Donald J. Trump. All right, and lastly here, we have another insider article. A lot of insider articles today. A white supremacist took MDMA for a study, and it snapped him out of his beliefs. Why am I doing this? So I've always kind of been of the line of thought that doing certain psychedelics and doing certain just being open to different ways of thinking can make people love more and can make people not so caught up in their own beliefs and what they've been taught, but it can make you a little bit more open-minded, okay, to how reality truly is and how we're just a bunch of humans, you know, a bunch of hairless monkeys spinning around on a rock, and we're all just trying to figure this out together. And there's no reason to hate anybody or to be racist towards anybody because other people are just trying to figure out how to live a good life. You know, whether they're Asian, black, brown, white, whatever religion they are, people are just trying to live a good life. So this is an interesting article to me. A white supremacist took MDMA in a scientific study and then questioned his extreme views. MDMA doesn't have a political agenda, but is thought to amplify what is going on in a person's head. The drug could have the potential to influence a person's values and priorities, the authors said. A leader in the U.S. white nationalist movement realized he wanted to change his extreme beliefs after he took this psychoactive drug, MDMA, as a part of a scientific study. The man, who is referred to by his first name, Brendan, was enrolled in an MDMA study in February 2020, which investigated whether the drug could increase the pleasantness of human touch, according to an adaptation of the book I Feel Love, MDMA and the Quest for Connection in a Fractured World by Rachel Newer, published by the BBC. After the experience, Brendan returned a form to the researchers and wrote, "This experience has helped me sort out a debilitating personal issue. Google my name. I now know what I need to do." The researchers looked up Brendan and discovered he was a white supremacist who had lost his job after being revealed as the leader of a white nationalist group. Brendan had attended the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. Immediately, they were concerned as to what sorting out an issue might refer to, but when they tracked him down, Brendan revealed that what he needed to do was simply love, as opposed to something more sinister. Researchers are investigating how MDMA could be used to treat mental and physical illnesses. MDMA is one of several psychoactive drugs that researchers are studying to assess whether they can be used to treat mental and physical illnesses. Insider has previously reported on its potential to treat anxiety disorders such as PTSD and alcoholism. The party drug, also referred to as Molly, is known for causing feelings of empathy and sociability. And as Harriet DeWitt, who led the research, told Newer, "It's what everybody says about this damn drug, that it makes people feel love." She added that it's mind-boggling that the drug could potentially change someone's beliefs in the way it is thought to have done with Brendan. However, MDMA doesn't have a political agenda and can't by itself solve racism. The authors of one journal article from 2021 argued that psychedelics could just amplify what is going on in that person's head. MDMA, for instance, has been used by the Taliban to channel connection to the divine during prayer chants, according to Newer. Newer pointed out that Brendan's seemingly spontaneous change appears to be an exception to the norm. MDMA releases the chemical oxytocin, which our bodies naturally produce. The chemical causes animals to fiercely love their own, but also protect them from others, which can mean a disdain for outsiders may actually increase. So what they're saying is, my take from this is, it's not like MDMA is just changing people who are racist and bigoted. They just take MDMA and it's just, they're just totally different people. No, you have to realize that something is wrong with racism and that something is wrong with white supremacy, and that is not a naturalistic, healthy view to have. And then in a way to, or as a way to back away from those beliefs that are deeply held by some people. What I'm reading is that MDMA can help people who are open to receiving the help and realize that having the racist beliefs that they have are wrong. So I don't want to just pretend like, oh, let's just go and just roofie a bunch of freaking Republicans and have them take MDMA or LSD or whatever, and that it's just going to solve the world's problems. No. You have to have an open mind first. Because as it's pointed out here, the Taliban, the Taliban can take the drug and have it affirm their, bigoted, medieval beliefs that they have. So it can work either way, right? But in Brendan's case, since he was open to changing his beliefs, it helped him. So in the case of Brendan, he had recently been exposed as a white supremacist and lost his job when he was enrolled in the study. He was full of regret about getting caught out. 30 minutes after, see what I mean? See, like I totally didn't even read this part yet, but he lost his job. He was ashamed, and he went into the study with a sense of shame for being outed as a white supremacist. That's a hard thing to get these people to feel, is shame. But if they can feel it, this can be a path towards adopting new beliefs. 30 minutes after taking the MDMA pill, Brendan questioned, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this way? And wondered why he had jeopardized the relationships in his life. During his time on the drug, he realized his life was missing connection. The case suggested that MDMA has the potential to influence a person's values and priorities, authors wrote in a case study about Brendan. They hypothesized that if extremist views are fueled by anger, fear, and cognitive biases, they could potentially be treated with drugs. Since the study, Brendan is trying to make changes for the better. He hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant to help him, enrolled in therapy, and began meditating. There are moments when I have racist or anti-Semitic thoughts, definitely, he said. But now I can recognize that those kinds of thought patterns are harming me more than anyone else. Good for you, Brendan. Good for you. Okay, I forgive Brendan. Okay, I forgive him for going to the white supremacist rally, and I'm willing to forgive any racist person that is willing to renounce their beliefs, take steps to adopting new beliefs, and really fully and holistically understanding why racist beliefs are harmful to not only society but to oneself. Okay, I am willing to forgive people that can make these clear, distinct steps towards becoming a better person. And I believe that if the United States of America is to politically get to a place where we're on par with some other places in the world in terms of education, access to education, in terms of access to healthcare, in terms of how poor the poorest of our country are. Studies like this are important, and I think that people who are willing to go through the process of this self-reflection, they should be recognized and they should be celebrated, because it's probably not a very easy thing to do. But nonetheless, there are still people like Brendan here that are attempting to change their beliefs. So that's all I got for you guys for the show. I want to thank you so much for joining. It's been a really, really nice time having you guys here. And I'll go ahead and catch you in the next episode of The Blue Wave, okay? So you guys have a great rest of your day or night or whatever. And catch you later. Peace.